This week in the Real Review is Sparkling Wine Week. So we're tasting sparkling wines from Australia and overseas, and with a view, of course, to the upcoming festive season, the summer, Christmas, New Year, etc. All of those end of year parties, all that sort of thing, where people tend to consume lots of bubbles. And the ones we're looking at today are a couple of less expensive examples. One is a Prosecco, which is only about $10 a bottle, and it's an Aussie wine. And then we're looking at an Italian wine from the north of Italy, from the Trentino region, Mezza, from Mezzacorona. And that's a $25 wine. So these are wines for general everyday consumption and for using in, Aperol spritzes, things like that, if you choose to drink that sort of thing. But they're very presentable on their own, of course, too. The wine we're tasting today is the Rewild Prosecco 2022, and this is produced by the Duxton Vineyards Group. Duxton is a broad-based agricultural company which grows fruits and nuts and even livestock, I think, in South Australia largely. And these vineyards are basically the Murray-Darling region, which is inland and near the Murray-Darling river system, and that produces large quantities of really inexpensive grapes. And it's a good place for growing wine that's as cheaply priced as this. $10 or $9.99 is not a lot of money. And this is a young wine, of course, 2022, very young, and we will expect a very fruity, fresh wine, not a complex wine, that's for sure. The wine has plenty of bubbles, it's good and lively. Have a look at that. There's plenty of fizz there, and nice cordon of bubbles on the surface, pale yellow colour, as you'd expect. It's less than a year old. And the wine just smells fruity. It smells herbal, grassy, a touch of celery there, all sorts of interesting herby type characters, but nothing complex or mature about it at all. It's very primary. There's even a hint of yeastiness there, still residual from the fermentation. Let's have a taste. How does it taste? It tastes fresh apples is the first thing that springs to mind, especially Granny Smith apples. That green and zesty, tangy taste of the Granny Smith. Lovely, simple, fruity, clean and well made. Sweetness is not an issue. Often in an inexpensive sparkling wine like this, especially a Prosecco, there'll be noticeable residual sugar. But this wine finishes with crisp acidity. It's refreshing, it's drying on the finish, appetizing. It makes you want to have another sip. So that's a pretty good example of a young Prosecco, obviously made to a price point, $10, and put onto the market very quickly after it was produced. And nothing wrong with that. That's actually really good everyday drinking sparkling wine, and excellent to make an Aperol spritz of as well, or a punch, or whatever drink that you might use sparkling wine in. How do we score this wine? We scored at 90, which is a really strong score for a Prosecco, and I think it's scored well for its freshness, its drinkability, the clean fruit characters that are coming through there, and exactly what you'd hope for in a young Prosecco. Drink it now, don't keep it. The food recommendation for this wine is fish and chips. Something simple, inexpensive, unfussy, and just like the wine itself. The wine we're about to taste is Mezza by Mezzacorona, Italian Glacial Bubbly, it's called. Interesting name. Italian Glacial Bubbly. And I suspect that because it comes from the Trentino area of northern Italy, which is just south of the Alps, that the glacial reference is to the glaciers which would have carved out the very striking scenery in this part of the world. Hills, valleys, mountains, and beautiful, beautiful country. And cool as far as Italy goes, and that's why they produce a lot of bubbly in the north of Italy and not so much in the south. And also the name Mezza is interesting. Mezza is obviously derived from the name of the cooperative which makes this wine, which is called Mezzacorona, part of the Gruppo Mezzacorona, which is a very big winemaking group in Italy. Mezza it's an interesting word. It means half, I think, in Italian, and it's in this sense it refers to the gap between lunch and dinner, or between dinner and going out for a party. It's all about the space in between meals, and I think the idea is that this is an anytime wine. You don't have to have it with a meal. You can serve it anytime you feel like a glass of bubbles. Very clever. Let's have a look at this wine as it pours into the glass. It's beautiful, frothy appearance, lots and lots of nice fine bubbles, a light yellow colour, and those bubbles are really bringing a lot of fruity aroma to the surface. This is a young and fruity wine, not an aged and complex wine. It doesn't tell us how old it is, but I'd expect it's less than 2 years old. Fruit. It's all about pears, pineapples, that sort of thing. Quite attractive, and absolutely no touch of yeast character at all. There's no aging involved in this. So it's almost a hint of muscat there. There's a spicy hint, almost a touch of lychee, a little bit of yeastiness. Quite attractive. Let's have a taste. And when you take it into your mouth, it's got lots of froth, lots of vigour, lots of vitality. It's fresh and young and fruity, lots of acidity, which cleans the finish and leaves the mouth refreshed, wanting another sip. But there's a touch of sweetness there, which is quite evident. The acidity balances the sweetness. They're both evident in this wine. It's, as I said before, a straightforward, fruity, not so serious wine for anytime sipping. It's a party wine, and would be very good in an Aperol Spritz as well. Nice wine. And what did we score it? We scored it 86, and we've said no need to keep this wine. The sort of wine you drink now, you don't cellar. So it's a drink within the 12 months, I would say. And as far as a food match goes, we've recommended Taramasalata. I think that would be good. A Taramasalata, dip it with your biscuit and a piece of toasted bread. Gorgeous with a wine like this. Good health.